introduction to, you know, my in-depth knowledge of what we're talking about tonight all happened through my son. Tom was a bright boy at school, and he went off to university to study medicine. The only one of my 3 kids who wanted to do that, and I was clearly very proud of him. He had also been a very good rugby player and had taken a concussion when he was about 14, 15. I remember that one at school. But, you know, recovered from that and went back to rugby, played really well. And in his first, so he went off to Western in Ontario. And it was the week before university, maybe the first or second practice for the university rugby team. And he let us know a day or two later that he had suffered a concussion. You know, he was not feeling very well. And I gave him the usual advice. This is the medical advice. It's still the current medical advice, is that you basically, when you suffer a concussion, you try to do as little as you can. You're sitting back and waiting for your brain to recover. And then as it recovers, you gradually allow yourself to do a bit more within the limits of what you feel and how you feel. And Tom gradually over the course of 4 to 6 weeks got better and went back to rugby and went on actually later that year to play some games for a Canada development team. So he could, you know, he was at that point just beginning to think that maybe he might make the Olympic team, because rugby is going to be in the Olympics in Brazil in 2 or 3 years' time. And then, but at university, he just wasn't doing as well as we might expect. So after a couple of years, Tom was basically let go from that program and swapped programs into doing business studies. And it was during his first year of that he was back in the rugby team. He had another concussion, relatively minor one, and he was off for about a month, not able to play. He was back in the rugby team, and his mum and I flew out to London to watch the finals of the university championship that he was playing in. And he played a great game. They won the game. We were with him in the bar afterwards, and he just seemed a little quiet. And his mum and I, flew home to Victoria. And when we talked to him a couple of days later on the phone, we said, you know, do you have a great night with the team that night out in the town? And he said, no, I went home and I went to bed. In fact, I haven't really been out of my room since then. And he had taken another, again, this time rather minor knock to his head. And then he comes home at Christmas. So the game was in November. And still, he can't do anything physical at all. To run up the stairs, he would get dizzy and have to sit down at the top of the stairs and wait for 2 or 3 minutes for his head to clear before he could get up and walk into the kitchen. He was largely unable to study. He said that he would start reading a page, and by the time he got to the bottom of the page, he couldn't remember the beginning of it. Anyway, it was Christmas time. I'm in Future Shop looking for Christmas presents, and Jeff's son and my son had gone to school together, and I just bumped into Jeff Courtnall, who I know very vaguely, really. And he said, so how's Tom? And I said, well, it's not been good. He's had a concussion. And Jeff Courtnall said, well, listen, there's this thing that I had that really helped me, this treatment at the Valentus Clinic. Here's a number, phone them and see what you think. And I'm a pretty straight kind of GP. You know, I'm a very traditional GP. I mean, I have an open mind, but I practice traditional family practice. And I have to say I was pretty skeptical about the idea that there was something, a treatment that nobody really knew about down in a clinic in Oak Bay that might really make the difference. But, you know, we were pretty desperate. It was Christmas time, and they couldn't get Tom in for this treatment. But he came home at reading break in the February, and again was still really struggling with school. And he had his treatment at Valentus. So Tom really, as he grew up through his later teen years, was a pretty sort of monosyllabic with his parents. Like, you know, we would ask him a question and he would give us one-word answer. So where are you going tonight? Out. Who are you going with? Friends. You know, this is the level of conversation I was used to having with Tom. And I thought, you know, typical teenager, and then he gets to 19, he's still got it, and he gets to 20, and he's still got it. So he comes home in February and he goes to have his treatment in Valentus. And what you do is you have your assessment the first day, and he has a treatment on the Monday morning and afternoon, Tuesday morning and afternoon. On the Wednesday, he comes home, and he said, oh my God, I can think more clearly now than I've ever been able to think before in my life. And so, being his dad and being a little skeptical, I sort of took it with a pinch of salt. But he just kept on raving about how the fog had lifted off his head and he could think clearly as he could ever imagine that he could think. Jeff Cortland talked about how the treatment had lifted the fog off his head. So I thought, well, maybe there is something in this Valentus treatment. On the Friday, I went with him for his final assessment. And as we're coming home, he said, you know, something else as funny has happened. I never really talked about it much, but for the last few years, I've had this constant anxiety feeling, this feeling that something awful is going to happen, or something I haven't done, or something bad is about to happen. And on the Friday when he drove home, he said, you know what, it's gone. I just don't have it anymore. Normally I'd be driving home thinking, am I going to like what Mum's made for dinner? Is Mum going to be mad? Am I going to be late? All these stupid little questions he'd be constantly asking himself. And his brain was at peace. He no longer felt that anxiousness. Anyway, so the end of the story is he's in business school at London. He's now doing very well. He's getting straight A's. And it's a shame. I don't think he'll ever get back into medicine, but, hopefully business will take him somewhere useful. The thing that I wanted to let you all know, especially all those people who put up their hands, or the people who are here for some other reason, maybe you know somebody has a concussion, is that there is a treatment that's not well known, not well accepted by medical society because it's too new, that can really make a difference. And so, since the story with Tom, I've probably had quite good contact with 10 or 12 different people who have been through this treatment. None of the guys here, I didn't know these guys here, and it's nice to meet them tonight. But patients of mine, or children of friends of mine, and in the most cases, the kids had, or the people that I'm talking about, had concussion with some associated symptoms. And every single person has had at least some improvement. Not everybody has had the startling improvement that Tom had, and some people have taken more than one treatment in order to get full relief. So I think the message that I wanted to bring is that there is something here in this little town of Victoria that works for this condition. And I've been able to put my skepticism aside, and I believe that Valentus has a system that really does make a difference for concussions. I look forward to your questions.